Welcome to Third Chances, a talk show where we like to hear from people who devoted their life to health, fitness, and wellness. Medical professionals, health coaches, and all the others who help us every day to cure our body, mind, or soul. Those who always look for more natural, holistic ways to help even more people to live a happier and healthier life. Those who don't like to give up easily and settle on you or themselves. It is never too late or too soon. I always believe that every one of us deserves not just a second chance, but as many as we need. I'm Vera, your host. Who better than a master of reinvention with an accent to guide you through it, right? Just like they say, you are not a tree, so move. And God knows I have done just that in my own life many times. If you are not completely happy with the direction your life is going, this show may help you get the courage to change what is needed, find a new path, and take charge. So come on over, pour yourself a glass of wine, and spend some time with us. Let's laugh and cry together and get inspired by people just like you and me who overcame their own doubts and took a leap of faith to reinvent their life on their own terms. I hope and pray that we help you on that journey. And if you feel so compelled and inspired, please let us know. Don't be shy. Who knows? You may just be our next featured guest with another inspiring success story. So here we go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Third Chances. This time, I have the pleasure to speak with Margaret Paul. She is a retired Navy Corpsman who served the United States for 20 years. After retirement, she completed her master's degree in counseling and psychology and has worked as counselor for children and adults and as a substance use counselor. She opened her own business in 2022 and left her full-time job at the end of 22 to fully embrace her new company called Mindfully Healthy LLC, which I love that name, by the way.
Thank you.
Margaret is very active in her community, doing volunteer work and supporting veterans programs. She loves to read, walk, practice self-care, does yoga, and she really loves to play games on her phone and tablet. Margaret, thank you so much for making time for me and welcome to my show.
Thank you so much, Vera. It's very good to be here.
I'm so glad we met because I realized that we have much more in common than we originally knew.
Yes.
And first of all, we live in the same state, even though ours apart.
Yes. Different ends of the states.
Yeah. And second of all, the sad things that also join us together is we lost our husbands almost at the same time back in 21. And I think I'm bringing it up because it's part of your story, why your kind of career that was oriented into military, which was absolutely wonderful. And thank you for your service, first of all. Can't even imagine. For me, it's always special to meet any veteran that, imagining that somebody sign off to be okay to put their own life in danger.
Yes.
It's big deal.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah. And so I would like to ask you how your life started. What did you want to be when you were little, when you want to grow up? It's kind of, for some people, comes full circle because your attention was kind of into medical field the entire time, correct?
No. So I grew up in a very small community in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. If for older generations, what I grew up with was very similar to a TV show back in the 70s and 80s called Walton's Mountain.
Okay.
And we lived in a very rural community and we knew everybody. When I was growing up, we had a 3-room schoolhouse.
Oh.
So there were 6 grades in that school and 2 grades for each classroom. We had a community center and volunteer fire department that we built. We had a semi-public pool. We had for a little while a 2-pump gas station, and for a little while we had a small grocery store. But for the most part, all we ever had up there was the school, the restaurants, and our community center and volunteer fire department. And it's still pretty much that way now. There's less restaurants up there.
Nice.
And the elementary school has grown. But when I was growing up, medically I wanted to be a veterinarian.
Oh, okay.
That was one. The other one was I wanted to be a truck driver.
Oh, why?
Well, when I was a kid, there was a TV show called BJ and the Bear. And the character BJ was played by Greg Evigan. And the bear was a monkey.
Oh.
And Greg Evigan was hot. So I wanted to be a truck driver so I could meet guys like Greg Evigan.
Oh, so you were not so impressed with the big trucks, more into like the
Well, I
community.
like the trucks too, but
Yeah.
he was better than the trucks. So,
Right.
and my parents didn't believe in paying for college. If we wanted to go to college, we had to find our own way. And so as I was getting ready to graduate high school, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And my brother, who is 2 years younger than me, he suggested that I join the military. And at that point, now I was leaning into a career in medicine. And so I originally went to the Marine Corps recruiting office and told them I wanted to be in the medical field. And they said, no, we don't have medical. You have to go across the hall to the Navy. And so that's how I ended up joining the Navy.
Oh, wow. But so that was just like that? No.
Just like that. Yep.
Wow. So tell me, how does it look like when you enter military training as a young girl? What did you have any expectations or imagining what it's gonna be like? Was it satisfying? Was it completely shocking?
Well, my parents were extremely strict. And so you did not break the rules, or else there were very serious negative consequences.
So
and
some discipline was already in you. Yeah.
Right. So, obedience, following the rules, that was already drilled very much into me. The biggest change for me was living with other people and being exposed to individuals that were not Caucasian. So my school my high school was very, very predominantly white and Portuguese.
Yeah.
We did not have a lot of other nationalities there. There were a few, but not very many. And I wasn't really very close to anybody there. So being exposed to a large group of people of varying nationalities was amazing. It was such a wonderful learning experience. Gave me so much more of an appreciation for all the different types of people that we have in the world. I learned so many things besides being how to be a sailor, but also about people. And I learned that you have to accept people for who they are, not for who you think they should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was wonderful to be exposed to that. The other big change was I had to get all my hair cut off.
I'm sorry, you what?
I had to get all my hair cut off.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. So we had to have very short hair when we went. And so I had mine cut before I left for boot camp.
Oh, well, these days I see girls having like, the buns and stuff that looks.
That's later. Once you get through boot camp, you can grow your hair back out. But while in boot camp, it had to stay short because you didn't have time to put your hair up.
Yeah.
And it was, the physical part of it was very easy because I was a very physically active person. I grew up in the mountains, so I was used to hiking a lot and lifting heavy things. So I could do push-ups. I could do all the physical things that were required. So it was more just the getting used to being with people and, being in that kind of an environment. But I thought it was fun, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. My company commanders, the 2 women that were in charge of us, they would always forget my name and they just called me Smiley.
Well, that's a nice name. That's
Yes.
a nickname. Was there many women at that time?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Were there many women at the time or was it more exception?
No, there was quite a few of us. I don't know how many women were there. So we went to boot camp for women at that time was in Orlando, Florida. And so Orlando in June, you know what it's like. It's gross.
Yep.
And so Orlando was a co-ed boot camp. So there was men and women there, but we were not allowed to talk to the men or associate with them, even when we were eating. We had to be in separate parts of the dining area. And yeah, so it was
We knew
definitely
why.
a unique experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the preparation or the physical part of it, the boot camp, how long does it take?
I want to say it was about 3 months, but that was back in 1984.
Right. Yeah.
So I really don't remember how long it was, but it was, you know, you learned all the how to we had to learn how to do the rifle drills and how to do foot push-ups, and we had to learn all the Navy information, you know, about the rank structures and shipboard and just so much stuff that we had to firefighting. We had to do life saving with swimming. Oh gosh, I'm trying to dig back in my memory.
Super practical things for life.
Yes.
Yeah. But then you were studying to become I forgot what was the
So after boot camp, I went to Great Lakes, Illinois to hospital corps school.
Okay.
And that teaches you the basics about being a hospital corpsman. And then from there, I went to my first duty station, which was in Maryland. And then after Maryland, I went to a specialty school and learned how to be a physical therapy technician. And that's what I did for most of the rest of my career, was physical therapy.
And were you ever in active duty? I mean, were you ever deployed?
No. So when I joined, when I was in corps school, they asked for the women in our class to fill out request sheets, because everything you had to ask for in writing to go on board ships. They wanted women on ships. And so we all did our request sheet to go on a ship. They all came back denied because they only wanted dental technicians to go on the ships. And then when I got into physical therapy was only shore-based at the time. So we only were at, you know, hospitals and clinics. And then about 5 to 7 years before I retired, they started doing trials to see if we should go with the front lines to combat.
Yeah.
And if we should be on board ships. And they found out that, yes, we were very instrumental in both environments. But by that point, I had my children. I was married, and I had junior personnel that I really wanted them to get promoted, because I knew that I was on my way out and they still had a long career ahead of them. So I chose not to try to go to sea, and I encouraged all my junior personnel to take those billets, and almost all of them that remained got promoted higher than what I retired as, which was awesome.
Wow, that's, it's fantastic to listen to somebody, because most of us civilians have no idea unless we saw some movies about, which is usually far from reality.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah. So as a woman, what would you say was the best thing it gave you, the 20 years in service?
Oh, well, for one thing, when I joined, I realized I was going into a predominantly male world. And I didn't feel that it was appropriate for them to change for me. But not that I necessarily needed to change for them either. I just needed to have an understanding that there may be practices and attitudes that were not as politically, socially, sexually correct as what we have now. Now I was in the medical field, so in a way it's a lot different than regular Navy. So I was around people that were helpers. So they had more of that empathy, more of that understanding. And I didn't really face a lot of discrimination or harassment. There was only 2 instances of discrimination that I faced. One was pretty severe, but there were 3 women involved, and we all chose not to pursue it. The other one was very mild, and I shut that down very quickly. So it wasn't a problem. I don't remember ever really being harassed sexually. I know that there are women that are out there, so this is not to say that it does not happen. I know a lot of women and some men that have been discriminated against, and sexually harassed.
Yeah.
And
I don't think that's exclusive for
no,
military.
it's not.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So I went in with the mindset of I'm going to just have a thick skin, and I didn't take a lot of comments a negative way.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, it was
exactly.
I just let it kind of flow off, and it became a positive and a negative. So I'm an extremely tolerant person. Sometimes that is a fault because things will be said to me that others are like, wow, why aren't you doing something about that? But to me, it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a good thing.
Rural upbringing, grows you thick skin because nobody is treating you like, the tender butterfly and somebody has to walk around and yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a tender butterfly.
Very different world.
Yes.
So how was the transition then to civilian life? Did you have
Horrible
issues?
Absolutely horrible. You're not prepared adequately, mentally, emotionally when you leave the military. So I joined the Navy when I was 17 years old. I went to boot camp when I was 18. I was in what's called the delayed entry program for 6 months. And that's where there's just no class for you to be in. So you kind of just hang out. So my early adult years where you're learning to all those levels of independence and things like that, that was all in the military where they're telling you what to do, where to eat, where to sleep, what to wear. You're told everything. There are very few decisions that you have to make. You can easily have a successful career just following what you're told to do. And so when you leave, all of a sudden that identity that you have is completely stripped off of you. So with a military person, when you're in uniform, if you're around other people, so if I'm around another Navy person in my uniform, they can tell how long I've been in the military. They know my last name. They know what my job is. They can see if I've gotten certain awards. They can know a lot about me just by my appearance because we wear it in our ribbons, in our rating device. We have marks on our sleeves that say how long we've been in, and we wear our name on our uniform. And so like this, the only thing people can tell about me is that I have gray hair, so I must be older, and I have bad eyes because I wear glasses. That's really all anybody knows about me just by looking at this. So I very much lost that sense of identity that I had created for 20 years. And I struggled quite a bit with that lost identity. I felt very adrift. Lots of bouts of not clinical depression, not where I needed to be treated, but where I just didn't feel like me. There was one day when I was going into work, I was wearing a blouse, a floral blouse that had wider sleeves than what I'm wearing right now. And I caught the corner of the sleeve out of the corner of my eye, and I had a full-blown panic attack because I was out of uniform. Now, this was 3 years after I had retired.
Yeah, well, because 20 years is a long time.
20 years is a long time, especially when you're that young. And those are those formative years when, when the brain is going through that last rewiring phase and you're becoming a full adult with an adult brain and all the other parts of being an adult. And now here you are, you're thrust into the world and you have to function and learn those skills again that you didn't have to learn when you were in the military.
By the way, was your husband then also military?
Yeah, my first husband, he and I met on active duty and we got married at our first duty station in Maryland. And then we had some separations due to the military. And then we finally got back together and had kids. And he had to go to war and he was on deployments while we had kids. And we went and did a tour overseas in Japan. And so we were on active duty together the majority of our career. And then unfortunately—
And when you retired, was he still there?
He was still on active duty when I retired because he outranked me. And he retired, though, just a few months after I did. So we retired and then we moved here to Florida. This is where he's from, is where I live in Florida. And then after 32 years of marriage, he decided he was done.
Yeah. Do you think he may have struggled with the similar issues that you did, the kind of like loss of structure and loss of
Well,
identity?
I'm sure he did. For him though, he had some he has severe PTSD from Desert Shield, Desert Storm. He has an alcohol use disorder.
Yeah.
And all of that has led to, I'm sure, helped him make that decision that we were no longer going to be married.
Yeah.
So
well, I don't know if you want to go there, but you did mention to me quite horrific period of time that followed with this divorce.
yes, and yes, we can go there because it all leads up to why I chose the career that I'm in.
Yeah.
You know, when I moved here, I was unemployed and I worked for a CPA firm for a very short time. And then I became a counselor. I went through a program with the military called vocational rehab. And I got my master's degree in counseling and psychology and worked as a counselor for children that have abuse and neglect allegations and that were removed from their parents. And then I worked with the parents, and then I worked just with children in general. But when we divorced in 2017. We had been, he asked for the divorce in 16, but it didn't get final until 17. And we had to sell our house. And there was quite a bit involved with that because, you know, realtors, selling property, it doesn't always go like you plan. And so we ended up having to live together after we were divorced, which was definitely not fun.
Not the best scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when I finally did get settled again, I had already decided, because he had an alcohol use disorder, that I quit drinking alcohol for an entire year. I was never a heavy drinker. I still am very not. In fact, I'm known as one and done. I will have one drink and I won't drink anymore. And I didn't date for a year because I knew I had to get my head back on straight. I needed to figure out where I was because I didn't want the divorce. When we got married, to me, that was for life. You get married once.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm from that older generation that still believes that, you know, even though I knew we were having a lot of problems, I felt that once our boys were grown and more independent, we would rebuild our marriage.
It's something that you work on, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready to throw the towel in.
You know, and then I'm thinking, going back to what you said before, like you both had that kind of suffering of big transformation from the military life to civilian life. So that's kind of loss of some stability and structure in your life, and then boom, and that's really a lot. Yeah,
it is a lot. Yes.
Yeah. And
it's
involved.
And if you don't communicate, you don't realize what's going on. And we had quit communicating like we should have, but you know, that's in the past. And so you alluded to everything else that happened after that. So after I started dating again, I met who would become my second husband, Robert. And we met in August of 2018. And then on October 10th of 2018, this area was hit by a Category 5 hurricane. There's only been 4 Category 5s that have hit the continental United States. And the eye of this hurricane went directly over Tyndall Air Force Base, which is about 20 minutes from where I live right now. And it destroyed this area. We lost 80% of our tree canopy. And of course, it hasn't grown back. It almost closed Tyndall Air Force Base. The damage was so extensive. East of Tyndall Air Force Base, there's a small town called Mexico Beach, and they got the storm surge, and they were almost completely washed off the map because the storm surge was so high.
How about the house or the living condition?
All the houses got washed away. So when the adjusters went down to Mexico Beach, all they found were concrete slabs where houses used to be.
That's the beginning of new love.
Yes. And so we're still struggling. We're almost 6 years away from Michael, but our mall is still closed. Our civic center is still closed. Both of our marinas one marina is still completely closed. One is very, very only barely open. We have a middle school that will never reopen. There's still so much devastation and debris down that we have wildfires now. We have horrid flooding because there's no trees to absorb the water. So we're constantly still in a state of trauma because everywhere you go, you still see signs of Hurricane Michael damage. And then as we were starting to recover from Michael and things were starting to open up, so all of our, so that school year, the beginning of the 18 school year, so October into the full 19 school year, our students didn't get a school year. They didn't get to go to school.
Where did you live? Did you have something?
Well, my house was still livable, but it did sustain some serious damage, and that's a little bit more of the story later down the road. But a lot of our schools were severely damaged, and so one of our high schools was having elementary school, high school, and middle school all held there in staggered stages. And they were throwing together virtual programs trying to help these kids to do school. So that whole school year from October of 18 all the way through to May of 19 was a combination of virtual school and temporary buildings and weird school hours. And so just as, you know, the schools were starting to come back online and things were starting to get normal again, that's when COVID started and we shut down again. Where I worked, we were just getting our furniture in. Our building was severely damaged, and so we lost all of our office equipment. They had to cut 3 feet up on the walls because of flooding. So they had to take out all the flooring, and they ordered our furniture. We were working off of camping and plastic folding tables. And so we got our new furniture and we were so excited. It was like, yay, we're getting furniture. And then COVID hit and they're like, okay, now everybody's got to go home. And we're like, what? So now our kids have another 2 years of non-traditional schooling. So areas that only had the 2 years, you know, the 20 and 21 school years, we had the 18, 19, 20, and 21 school years that were not traditional schooling. So our Baker Acts here went up 100% after Michael, and they went up another 100% after COVID. And then in 21, I got COVID. And unfortunately, I gave it to my husband. We had been married for a year and a half, and he died September of 21 from COVID pneumonia. So we got to be newlyweds.
That was something.
Yeah. And he didn't have a lot of underlying health conditions. And every time I asked to speak to a doctor while he was on the traditional wards, when he went to the ICU, I did finally get to talk to a doctor, but he was only on the ICU for about 2.5 days. He was in the hospital for over 2 weeks, and I never spoke to a doctor. The nurses assured me that the doctor would call me and he would explain everything. And I kept asking why there was a steady decline. What were they doing for him? And they would read off his chart, but they wouldn't tell me anything else. They wouldn't let me visit him. I did finally get one visit before he went onto the ICU. And then I got to visit him again on the ICU the day before he died.
I'm so sorry. That's some trauma. That's, you know, when you listen to something like that, you realize how much we take for granted so easily.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people I spoke with some people that were saying, like, how could you live in Florida, all these hurricanes? I believe that's kind of like the tax we pay for the living in paradise. Yeah, it is. It is
Yes.
our head, you know, but there are earthquakes in California.
Yes.
There are wildfires.
And there's tornadoes and there's heavy freezes. So anywhere you live, anywhere in the world, you're going to have some form of natural disaster.
Yeah.
But
you got hit quite a bit overhead for a while.
Oh, yes. Yes. We don't need anything else here and actually about a month ago, we had 8 tornadoes tear through here. And one of those tornadoes hit 2 of the private marinas that were also damaged in Michael and had been damaged years before in Hurricane Ivan.
You better rebuild from concrete.
Well, yeah, they can't though. You can't store boats in that. So,
oh boy. Yeah, well, that's interesting because after all that would be for some people quite enough to get depressed and be in trauma for themselves. And here you are becoming trauma coach and dealing with these issues, helping other people to deal with those issues. How this came your way that you were looking at becoming a coach?
Well, when I got divorced, I didn't want to stay stuck. And so I made sure to work on myself and coming to terms with my divorce. And meeting Robert helped with that so much. He helped me heal quite a bit from the divorce. And then I also helped him quite a bit with his own life traumas. And because anytime you meet somebody that late in life, we all have baggage.
Yeah.
And we were very accepting of each other's baggage and very tolerant and, wanting to talk about it and share it and help each other work through it, which was such a beautiful thing. I mean, I'm so grateful for the time that I had with Robert. It was, it will never be long enough, but it was long enough. It's one of those weird things. And so I was thinking about that, I knew we were going to talk about this. And so part of it was I identified what I didn't want. I didn't want to be stuck in my grief. I didn't want to become bitter. I didn't want to stay in bed. I did want to stay in bed. Trust me.
Yeah.
I wanted to stay in bed. I wanted to drink my heart out. I wanted to do everything that was unhealthy. But what I'm grateful for is during the divorce, I had a job that was very supportive and some very supportive coworkers, and I had my children. And then after all of that settled down, and then, dealing with Robert's death, which not only was the death, of course, very hard, but Robert was also prior military. He did Army, Navy, and then Air Force. And so not only did I have to deal with the civilian side of somebody dying and their estate, but I had to deal with the military side. So it's almost like double the amount of paperwork that you have to deal with when somebody dies. And it was horrific trying to go through all of that paperwork. And if I tear up, it's because I've done a lot of work, but there are moments that it still gets to me very much so. There's still a lot of grief in there that I'm working through.
Oh, for sure.
But I got onto some support groups. I got onto Facebook to some widows pages. And I saw what I didn't want. There were so many women, and these are the women I would love to reach. So I'm actually signed up for a grief coaching course. It starts in June, because I want to be able to help women that are going through the same thing. Because there were so many that I was reading on Facebook that from what that sounded like, because Facebook is just such a quick snapshot. So I'm not saying that everybody is doing this, and I'm not casting judgment on anybody. But they seemed stuck in their grief. Even some of the people that I spoke with during some of my grief groups, they were holding on to it and not letting that person go, staying anchored in the past, bitter,
that's not
unhappy.
a good place to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't want that for me. I'm not that kind of a person. And so
you were a very strong personality to come to it and to deal with it. I think that's kind of structural life helped you to keep some structure of, when the carpet is pulled from underneath your body. It's a huge, you went through huge change after huge change, and I call myself master of reinvention.
The other part that really helped, besides the structure and the organization, is in the medical field. Some of the jobs that I did, I worked in an emergency room when I was in Maryland, and then again in Japan. And you have to learn to compartmentalize what you're faced with, because we saw some very, very horrific traumas. I didn't have to deal with any combat related wounds. That was later on. Or at other, that was just not my job at the time, but I did deal with some very, very traumatic injuries, people dying, children being injured. And you have to learn how to not let that get to you, or else it will kill you.
Yes.
And so that helped a lot with not only with the traumas that I was facing, but also with my job as a counselor. you know, because I'm working with families that have abuse and neglect allegations. So somewhere along the line, somebody said that those parents hurt their children or neglected their children. And whether it was true or not is irrelevant, but I had to work with those families and help them rebuild their lives and try to get their children back, along with then becoming a counselor for those same children and then working with those same parents and helping them recover from substance use. And so if I allowed all of that to get to me, it would destroy me. The compassion fatigue, burnout syndrome. I mean, there's so many words for it. And I think that all of that, my military training, my medical training, also being a counselor, helped me to identify what I didn't want and how to move forward. Like we've mentioned before, we know the tools, we know what we're supposed to do. We have the knowledge. Sometimes we're just not able to do it because of our own emotional state. And sometimes our own form of denial.
Everybody's human. Everybody's a being, and you need sometimes, and especially after going after trauma, you need somebody else's perspective to kind of help you out of that bubble, because you can be frozen in. It's so shocking. Then you just like, it doesn't make sense anymore, no matter how trained you are. But when I'm listening to you, I'm kind of thinking, what a divine intervention that you went through all this schooling to kind of prepare you for what was in the back.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I got goosebumps.
I think so.
Yes. Well, and my childhood, growing up in such a rural area.
Nothing happens on chance. I deeply believe it. And this is something like when, imagine, you know, like anybody, it's funny, I always remember I used to sell wine for a living years back.
Oh, neat. Okay.
And I loved it. And there was this very unique winemaker in California, and she was quite outspoken about things. And you know, you either love her or hate her, because she didn't filter her opinions. But I remember she was once talking about the wine is like people. When you think of it, wine has to go through a lot of struggle. The more stress and struggle the wine goes through,
Sweeter it is,
the better fruit
flavor. Yes.
And the more quality wine is actually made from. So what I've seen, like I have seen in Spain, roots of the wine that have to go half a kilometer down to get any water in, like all stones. There's no even soil to be seen. All these things, I think, really matters, because when everything goes easy in your life, how are you supposed to build these muscles? Nobody wants to go through anything bad. And unfortunately, it's part of life. And when it happens, I don't know if it's better or worse to happen all at the very condensed time, but it makes you who you are today. And that's probably why you are a brilliant counselor, because you are able to relate to that, what your clients go to, and you are able to help them, because it's not from the books, because you lived it, you experienced what they may go through. Obviously, everybody is unique and their reaction is unique, but it is so important that you are someone who can relate to so many multiple issues that people may be dealing with and be understanding. Crazy.
It is amazing how things like that, when I do my journaling, that is actually one of those questions in there was, you know, kind of like, what's your timeline? And I never really thought about it that way, that, you know, it's all of that stuff that I did help prepare me to not, definitely to survive and thrive despite the trauma, but it's more than that. It's more that it prepared me so that I didn't let it derail me and become stuck. And, you know, I mean, and there are moments when I am stuck and I am derailed. But I know it will pass, and I know I don't have to remain there. And so when I do get those moments, and that actually happened last week, I had one of those days where I woke up and I was sad. I stayed sad all day. I cried most of the night. I knew it would pass. And, it was just one of those days.
But that's,
And I
that's
didn't allow myself to stay there.
exactly, because that it's suppressing those feelings is worse. And some
Yes.
people do that. And I had a tendency at the beginning of my grief to kind of suppress it and just keep going like nothing ever happened, and just believing that being busy will kind of calm me down. And it's of course not a good idea,
No.
because I then gave in and I spent a lot of time on the beach, actually.
It's a great therapeutic place, isn't
Exactly.
it? Yes.
And
I
I
love the
just
beach.
loved it. And I just sit there. Nobody was talking to me. I could cry as much as I want behind those dark glasses. Nobody sees. Nobody worry about, are you okay? I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to breathe and just be there, because it's just bigger than us. Everything is bigger than us. It's like we are this little tiny particle of a huge universe.
Can we pause for just a minute?
Mhm.
My niece is calling and she's called twice now, so I'm
Absolutely.
worried. Hang
Okay.
on just a second. Hey, honey. Okay, I was worried because I'm in a meeting right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I learned because I started working with widows. Everybody has completely unique process and timeline and everything. And I
Yes.
don't believe there is a blueprint that is telling you what you are supposed to and when you are supposed to. And there are some books that it was so useless to.
Oh, yes.
Because I don't think there's prescription how long and how deep you are supposed to grieve and what you're supposed to do. And everybody has a whole different needs. And that's what makes it unique, because I think, sadly, that other widow can relate so much deeper to you than anybody in,
Right.
when we were dealing with this stuff. And I think we got on a call before and talked about this. I remember, and unfortunately, those are same things that I used to say to other people, how shallow anything you can say at that moment feels. And it's
Yes.
not, people mean well and people want to be there for you. And it's just, it was, I can't even explain it. It was so surreal. Everything just felt so weird. Like nobody can relate to it. Such a like emptiness kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, like you and I, when we talked before, you mentioned that it felt like part of you was missing.
Yeah.
And, I sat with my friend and we talked about this, but I'm going to tell it again. I sat on my porch with my friend and she asked what it was like. And she's got her husband. And I said, imagine that every little thing that he does, taking out the trash, touching you as he walks by, just his breathing in the same room, every little minute thing that he does stops, is gone,
Yeah.
is taken away, and yet you're still here and you're still living, but you feel like you've been cut in half because you can't reach for them and touch them anymore. You can't. My husband had a recliner, and he would sit in the recliner, and I would come up behind him and wrap my hands around his chest and put my head next to his. And when I finally sold that house and I left the recliner there, but even up to the day that I left, I would still go up to the recliner and hug the recliner just like he was sitting there,
Yeah.
because it gave me a little sense that he was still with me. I know many people might not understand that, but when you're used to living with people, and I have lived with somebody since, with the exception of 2 very short periods, I have always lived with somebody until Robert died.
Mhm.
because I left my parents' house and I went to boot camp, and then I went to school where I had roommates. And then I went to my first duty station where I had roommates. Then I went to school again where I had roommates. And then my husband, who had married, we finally got to live together. And then when he was on deployment, then I was living alone, but I had my neighbors, and it was for short periods. I knew he was coming. I was pretty sure he was coming back.
Yeah.
And then
And you have kids too, so
and
you
then
were
we
not
had kids.
completely alone.
And then even after the divorce, one or both of my children was living with me. And then I also had pets. I had a cat and a dog. And then when Robert died, all I had was the dog that he inherited, and then I inherited, and then I had to put her down that following January. And so from September of 21, when he went in the hospital, I've been living alone since then. And when you are in your 50s and you've lived with somebody for over 50 years, and maybe not the same person, but there's always been somebody there.
Yeah.
And now
Just
you're
don't
living
know
alone.
how to live alone. Yeah.
It's like, how do you do this? How do you make sure that all the chores are done now? Do you become that really fastidious cleaner that just cleans everything? Or do you become a complete slob? Or do you find some middle ground? And I'm very much a middle ground there. I'm a little bit on the sloppy side, but I'm not, it's always cluttered in my house. But then filling that empty time, not having that person to talk to. And then there's certain things that we did together. Like, he really loved popcorn. Loved popcorn. I don't eat popcorn. I only ate it with him. There were certain TV shows that we watched, and new seasons have come out since he's died. I can't watch them. Just because, like you said, there's that timeline. There are certain things that we can do, and there are certain things we can't. And recognizing that it's okay that you have not let that go yet, or you have not picked that back up
There's no
yet.
law. Yes.
Right. I have a bag of his clothes out in my shed. I have some of his clothes in my coat closet. I have his mementos. I've got his little special box of mementos. I have, pictures of him still scattered around. And I'm still letting some things go as I grow and change and create this new version of me.
Yeah. That's the thing that was actually surprising for me, probably the most, because I did not expect losing my whole identity. I felt like my confidence was gone. It was a whole different animal. I was always the one kind of in charge, and if there was some issues, we would make decisions together, and he was looking at me as a decision maker, and he was always kind of, what do you think and what do you want? So it was, you get used to it, that you are kind of, you have to make the decision, because he was kind of,
right,
on one hand undecisive, and on the other hand he wanted to give me the right to decide. And so, yeah, like you said, it's really absolutely weird. And I actually, new friends came to my life shortly after my husband was diagnosed and died shortly after. And their relationship is wonderful, and it's very much remind me of us. And she's a great cook. Like, I actually had a business with cooking, and he's running around with the list of things and chores and getting stuff that she forgot, because she's already cooking, so she can go to the store.
Right.
And it just reminded me how easy it was. God forbid I forgot something and I was in the middle of doing something, he would jump in a car and get it.
Right.
It's just, now you don't have it. You don't have anybody to ask. Yeah. Those are unimportant little things, but it builds up, because suddenly you realize I was so proud of myself. My father was super handyman, so I spent a lot of time with him in a garage. He was able to fix everything, anything.
My father also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody bring anything, neighbors, he was capable of fixing cars, gutters, roofs, name it. And so I learned quite a bit with him, but I would not dream of attempting fixing my car. Well, I have a Chevy Trailblazer, and it's quite difficult to get into the lights in the back. So we always brought it to, with the oil change, we would, if the light went off, we would have it changed, because it's, you have to go from the inside and stuff. And funny thing, I was so proud of myself because I lost the blinker light, and somebody, you know, mentioned it to me when I was driving, and I'm like, okay. And I went to AutoZone and I went online and I look up some YouTube videos, thank God YouTube. And
yes, thank God for YouTube.
I was able to change the very complicated light bulb in my car. And I'm like, damn, you know, I just,
look at me.
So you get those little winnings, which is, it may really sound silly for somebody who doesn't understand, but those little things kind of made me happy. And like you said, you do things that are illogical to other people, and you talk to him, and
I talk to him every day.
Yeah. And especially when it was somebody you had a very great, deep understanding, and sharing, you know, sharing a background and sharing profession and sharing love, of course. And I'm so sorry for you, because you were just at the beginning to start creating memories, which is really tough.
Yes. But we filled those. So we were together for 3 years and 1 month, and we filled those 3 years and 1 month. We had some amazing trips, some fun times, even with COVID. After the hurricane, his daughter's family had to come live with him because their house was so badly damaged. And then I moved out there. So there were 6 of us living in this 3-bedroom house, and it was chaos. And, you know, while we were there, there were times it was just so hard, because it was so much, you know, with everybody there and all their belongings, and their 2 young daughters and the little chihuahua. I mean, there was a lot going on. And then when they finally got their house rebuilt, and they were so excited to go home, and we were so excited for them, but probably just a couple of days after they left, we're like, oh, we miss them. We want them to come back.
Yes, I know, right? Yeah.
And they didn't want to come back out to the property, because they were, you know, they were home. They were finally in their home,
enjoying their privacy.
You know, yes. And so we're out there, we're like, okay, now what are we gonna do? But it was an amazing time. And, you know, one of the programs that I was trained in was also trying to find the silver linings, even in traumas.
Yeah.
Because there can be a gift, even with such profound traumas that, you know, that I faced during those times. And, you know, the gift after Michael was, you know, our neighborhood, our community really pulled together. I got to meet people that lived on my same street that I'd never talked to before. You know, we had so much help come in. They thought we were only going to lose, I think they estimated like 3,000 light poles, and I think it was 7,000 that were replaced. Yeah, I mean, it was just this stupidly high number.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, after the divorce, I told you, you know, after I moved out of my house, I was homeless for 2 weeks before I could move into my new house. Well, the realtor that sold my house for me and helped me buy my new house, she had an empty rental, and she let me live there for 2 weeks rent free with my boys, with my dog, with my cat. She even jumped my car off so that I could drive to her house to take a shower, because the water wasn't working. The well wasn't working properly. So we couldn't take a shower that first night. And then, you know, after Robert's death, you know, just the amount of resilience and strength. And like you said, learning skills that you would never have had to do. You would never have had to change that light bulb. And you didn't have to. You could have taken it somewhere. You didn't have to change it, but you chose to try. And you've done that before.
I think I just needed to accomplish something.
Yes. To say, okay, I'm not a total failure. I'm not a total spaz or chaos or whatever. I'm still this functioning, smart human being that can do things, even though I've felt like a total hot mess for the last however many months. And, you know, it gives us that sense of accomplishment and security that we're able to still function. And so there are silver linings, even in horrible situations. It's just, sometimes it's such a challenge to find them, and you almost don't want to see them, because especially when you're dealing with a death, I think if you recognize the positives, does that minimize the pain that you felt? when they die, does that minimize your memories? Does that minimize how much they mean to you? And no, because if that person really loved you, then they would want you to keep going and growing and changing and being the best person you can be. And I know that that's what Robert wanted for me. And, you know, I was very grateful on the day before he died when we were in the ICU with him. He told his daughter that I was the love of his life. And I get to carry that with me for the rest of mine. Yeah. And the people that came out, so Robert was known as what his nickname was, Grampy. That was what his grandchildren call him, because he was a very grumpy person. Everybody who knew him tells me how grumpy he was. Really? He was just this really angry person, but I didn't see that. The smile, Robert had such an amazing smile. And so there's a woman that he worked with. He was on active duty, and then she became she works part-time at the commissary. And she sent me this on Facebook, how Robert walked into the commissary one day and he was smiling and giggling. And I'm going to cuss, so I apologize in advance. And if you need to bleep me out, got the warning. She said, "What the hell happened to my friend?" Right. And she goes, and then he introduced me to his new girlfriend, Margaret.
Oh, wow. So he was grumpy before.
Yes. And then he was smiling and laughing and giggling and wanting to do things and wanting to go places and wanting to be with people and experience things and enjoying life. And everybody that knew him,
what you did
before me, that was not what they saw. They saw this grumpy man that hated life, that didn't want to be around anybody, really. And now he's alive and he's happy. And I got to bring that to him. And that is amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah. You know, that's the one beautiful gift we have and choice we can make, that we can look at these things as a loss and lack, what we lost, or we can look at it with gratefulness that we were so blessed to have that love.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge difference how you deal with your own emotion and pain, because of course the pain is there, and of course the pain is gonna be there.
Yes.
But you can choose to eventually look at it like, look how grateful I can be that I got to experience love like that. And I got to bring this out of him, like you say. Yes. That's the most beautiful feeling. Some people never, ever experience love like that.
No. Yeah. And I'm so, you know, and that's part of this process, is where I can talk about him and smile, and I can talk about the good things. And, you know, even if there are a few tears hanging, you know, right behind my eyes, it's still so beautiful that we had that time together. And the coaching program that I went through, it's a health and life coaching program. And the health part, that's part of it, was looking at health as a source of abundance, not scarcity. And like you said, not looking at what I've lost, but what I gained from being with him, and what I gained from our relationship, and being able to help transform this man from this really grumpy, angry person to this guy who smiled and giggled and laughed and played. And I mean, I have pictures of him where he's wearing funny hats, and he would never have done that before.
Can I ask you how you met? Because if he was grumpy and angry, how were you attracted to him?
Because so we met online.
Oh, okay.
We met on a platform called Zoosk. Your cat's behind you, and that's a beautiful cat.
Yeah, that's Sissy.
Oh, beautiful.
She needs to be involved, you know.
We met online, and it's a great story. Actually, how I met my first husband is a great story also. Very, very wonderful story. And but Robert and I both tried eHarmony, and we hated it. We didn't get matched with people that we wanted to. And it's not slamming eHarmony, it just didn't work for us. Yeah. So we both got on Zoosk at different times, and I saw his profile. And like I said, his smile. He was smiling in the picture because his friend who lived on the property, she's a beautiful person. I love her to death. We are great friends now. She took a look at his profile and said, there is nobody going to date you with this profile and those pictures. So I'm sure that was the grumpy Robert.
And she was right.
Yes. So here was this man who, when I looked at his age, I was like, oh, he's 9 years older than me. Oh my gosh, can I date somebody 9 years older? But his smile, he didn't look 9 years older than me. And my friend, who has helped me through this whole process, her husband is 9 years younger than her. And we talked for years. They've been together for a long time. And we talked for years at the beginning about how she was 9 years older and she was uncomfortable with that. And I was like, age is just a number. Well, here I was, Oh, so I was like, I'm going to give him a chance. I'm not going to let age be my stop. Well, he didn't look at my age, because every woman that he had looked at the age that was younger than him, and he reached out to them, they wouldn't talk to him. So he made a point not to look at my age. So we went to dinner at Chili's. That's where we met for the first time. And we hit it off. It was just a wonderful night. We just enjoyed each other's company. We stayed in contact. It was very much a deep connection right at the beginning. I can't say we were in love, but it was a very deep connection. And
did you live nearby?
Yeah, he lived actually. So I lived in, when I was married to my first husband, I lived in a community north of Panama City called Southport. And that's where he lived.
Oh.
So we actually lived in the same community, but because it's very spread out and we didn't run in the same circles, we never met each other. And it wouldn't have worked had we met each other either. Because he's like, well, why couldn't I have met you sooner? I'm like, Robert, it wouldn't have worked. We weren't meant to meet until now. And we both believed very much in that a lot of things happen for a reason.
Yeah.
And so we met and we dated for a year, and he really wanted me to get married to him. And that's the one thing I wish I had done differently. I wish I had married him sooner, but I didn't, because I was still hung up on the you only get married once thing. And so I kept resisting, actually getting married. And then we got married on our front porch, and my friend's husband officiated our wedding. And it was just a little family affair, and it was wonderful.
Beautiful. You just took my question out of my mouth, because I was going to ask you, even though it's always seems silly to me, because none of us say they would change a thing. But when you look back through your whole kind of career, relationships, all that happens, if you had that choice and you were 20 years again with what you know today, would there be anything you would do differently?
The only thing that I would do differently was when I was just graduated from high school, I had the opportunity to go to Egypt. It was one of those package deals. So your airfare, your hotel, your tours, everything was included. All you needed was money for food and souvenirs. Wow. And I let my mom talk me out of going.
Oh, no.
And that's the only thing really, as looking back on my life, because, and in a way, that's not a fair question. Because if we look back and we want to change parts of ourselves, then that takes away from who we are right now.
That's correct.
So even all the bad things that I've been through, the traumas from my youth, my marriage to my first husband failing, well, not failing, that's not the right word. It wasn't a failure. Ending would be the right word. Robert's death, the hurricane, things like that. That's all of that has helped create who I am. Sure. And if I change one piece of that, even that trip to Egypt, I would be a different person. But that's an easy thing to look back and say, wow, I wish I had done that trip to Egypt. But who knows?
That's still,
who knows how change that would make me,
That may be still in stars somewhere for you. There's, you never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
And so that's why I don't really feel that there's much about my life that I would change.
Yeah, I think we all have that when we go through the bad season and we feel like it can't get any worse, and we are really on the bottom and ask, why and stuff. None of us enjoys it, of course, and none of us wishes it happens. But then you look back few years later, and you realize, like you said, you really need that period to open another door or to grow in another area, or you need to understand certain things in order to become that new person that you are now. And it's And I think this, all that happens prepared you for your coaching business. That is incredible, because you can now help people with various traumas, and
Yes.
that's what you do. But you don't only specialize in working with adults, you also specialize working with children. Is that correct?
Well, I haven't worked with any children as a coach, not at this point. I am mentoring some middle school students, but I'm not doing the coaching. I do want to work with teenagers. Unfortunately, coaching costs money and it's not covered by insurance.
Yes.
And so it's a little bit harder for people, especially in our area. We have a very wide range of incomes, and so it is a challenge. And so I'm still working on building my business. I've only been in business for just a little over a year, and I've had quite a few clients that have been very successful, and I've got some great testimonials. So I'm hoping to get more clients. I'm optimistic I'll get some eventually. And with this, I met a woman who is a death doula, and I'd already been thinking about getting into a grief coaching program. And she said that if I do that, she would like to collaborate with me.
Yeah.
So that would
I had
help.
one death doula on my podcast.
Yeah.
Actually, it was the first time I ever heard of it. I didn't even know this exists.
Yeah, I didn't either until I met her. So we have a very wonderful woman here that she does a lot of connection type work. She likes to host events just to get people to connect, kind of like what Alignable does.
Yeah.
Just helping build those connections. And so she does these things. It's called Coffee Sips and Marketing Tips.
Nice.
And so that's where I met her, was at the first one of those. And, we got to talking, and it's a really neat concept of what she's doing.
I love that. And you are so active in your community. You are volunteering in all kinds of different activities. So you are meeting tons of people.
Oh, yes.
I would encourage you not to depend only on local community, but the coaching, and with COVID, it changed everything. You can actually really get in touch with anybody in the world and be able to coach them. And I would encourage everybody. That's one of the reasons why I do this podcast, because when I was first in position, that I realized that if I want to grow and if I want to overcome certain issues that I had, that I really need a professional help. And it's the friend or even partner cannot do that for you. You need somebody who keeps you accountable, who kind of gently pushes you, but who also has the expertise to be able to help with certain stuckness that we have, that we believe we can work with. And I believe at that time, I had a really hard time. How do you research somebody that will eventually click with you? Because this coaching is very personal work, very deep. You have to trust that person. And that's why I love what I do, because I get to meet different coaches that specialize in different things. But most importantly, they are different personalities, and everybody works for somebody else.
Right.
Everybody, like, there are coaches that I would never even dream of working with because they don't resonate with me. And they may be wonderful for somebody else, for another kind of people. And just like how unique we are, the same way there are coaches for anybody that wishes to work with one. And I would encourage you, if you resonate with what Margaret as a person is, and that's why we talk so much about the personal, because I believe that's really what forms us, and that's what she can bring to the table. And if, God forbid, you went through something like that as well, she will understand because she went through it. It's not something that she learned at school from books. It's the experience is a whole different story. And if you just want to say a little bit about your coaching practice, what you do and what it can look like for somebody if they thought of reaching out to you.
So the program that I was trained in is a bit set on habit change, whether it's lifestyle habit change or health habit change. And I chose the program because it was life and health coaching, which is very integral. You can't have one without the other. If you want a happy, healthy life, you've got to be physically healthy, And if you want to be physically healthy, ideally, you've got to have a healthy life so that you're eating and exercising and doing all those lovely things that keep the body young and active and healthy. And so it's actually a 12-week program, and it's based on identifying what's been tried, what has worked, what hasn't worked, looking at what hasn't worked and why it didn't work, coming up with new ideas that might work better. All my clients get homework, but it's never anything that they can't do. And it's not usually something that I assign. We talk about what their next steps should be at the end of each session, and they get to decide if that's something that they want to work on. And each session builds on the previous sessions. I'm also offering kind of an a la carte kind of program for people that might just want some fine tuning, or if they want to continue after a 12-week program, they want to keep going with coaching. We can do that, not be a full 12-week program again. But I can coach on relationships, finances, business, spirituality, just life in general. With health, it's weight loss. I can coach people that have lifestyle related illnesses like diabetes and heart disease. But with health coaching, especially if they have an underlying health problem, they have to be under the care of a physician of some kind. And I will never contradict or offer medical advice because I am not a doctor. I'm a health coach. So I'm going to be that accountability partner. And so I like to tell people that I get to walk beside my clients as they go through their life and make the changes that they want to make. I'm their support. I'm their accountability. I'm their challenger. I am whatever they need at that moment. And it's such a great job. And it's so amazing when I get to watch my clients have those moments of epiphany where they're like, oh, I get it. Oh, I see how this led to this and that led to this. Or when they come back after, I've got one client that I'm seeing on a monthly basis now, and they come back after a month and they're like, well, this is what I'm doing differently now. And this is something that I'm seeing. And it's such a growth from where they were even at our previous session, and I love it. I love watching that. I love being able to share that wisdom and share their progress. And it's very rewarding. And, a lot of people feel that, you get into counseling because you're not going to get rich being a counselor. And some people will do. So you're not really going to get rich as a coach, but some people do. And so it's not the money that we get out of it. It's that helping other people, that good feeling you get, because it's not completely altruistic. I get something out of it. I get to help people.
Yeah.
And
it's the purpose also and the impact that you have, that for somebody who was in service your whole life, you were always led to be in service. And it's just very natural that you would go there and use all that experience to help somebody else again. And I would really encourage anybody who listens today, if you are resonating with Margaret, and hopefully if you're watching on YouTube, she's really like sunshine personality. I absolutely love it. It's important who you have on your side. You can trust, if you can trust her, if she can resonate, understand, if she's not judgmental. All these things are important for somebody who make that decision to hire a coach to master their life, because you need to trust them. You need to work with them closely. And it's the whole question between being successful or not. And everybody who makes that decision, of course, wants the best coach that would work for them. And that I believe that, that's why there's so many choices. And I would love to work with you myself. It's just
thank you.
Because when you relate with person on so many levels, it doesn't feel like business transaction.
And to me, it is. I mean, I will. So my first session is always free. It's not part of the 12-week program. It's to see if this is a good fit.
Yes.
And there is a soft, very, very soft sale pitch. I will talk about my business at the very end, but there's never any pressure for anybody to sign up with me. And if they choose not to, that is wonderful for them because they've made that choice. But regardless, I will make sure they leave with some tools and some work to do as a next step.
And then if they do, anyway,
and if they do choose to sign on with me, then we do the business dealings. But that's it. It is a business, but it's not about business. It's about my client. It's about that connection that I get to create with that person.
I think it's very similar with, even though coaching is not teaching, because coaching is, the energy is a little different because the client itself actually is leading because everybody has a unique needs and a unique personality, and it's not about coaching telling you what to do.
No,
it's about you, with the help of a different perspective, figuring out what will work for you the best. So it's very personalized, very, very deep work. And I just love it. And that's why we all have coaches as well, because even though we are professionally trained, you cannot figure out things. You cannot see the trees for the forest, like they say.
Yes.
You may know all the tools, but you need somebody else's perspective to kind of, keep you aware of what you, like we had this first conversation, and Margaret caught me on one word that I kept using a few times that I wasn't aware of. And it's the inner dialogue that we have that influence our actions and moods and everything else. So it is invaluable, in my opinion, to have somebody like that. And every good sport athlete, if they want to succeed and they want to be exceptional, they have their own coach, and they have a good coach. So nobody needs a coach, but if you want to succeed and be masterful and excel, it would speed up your process, and it will definitely get easier with the guide.
Yes. Thank you. Yes,
absolutely. I have a last questions that just kind of wrap this all together. And I don't know how to formulate it so it doesn't sound weird, but I mentioned before we got recording, I mentioned my big mentor that I love is Brendon Burchard, one of the most beloved motivational speakers, a very, very humble, wonderful man. And I'm on his mailing list for years, and I just love learning from him. And he once said something to the effect of, when I get to the end of my life, did I live? Did I laugh? Did I make difference?
I love that.
And I like to ask you, when you get there, when we eventually get there, what would you like to be addressed like, or what would you like to be remembered by? What would be out of your whole life, all the kind of roles that you played as a soldier and corpsman and wife and a mother and coach and whatever, what would you like to be remembered by the most?
Love.
Be kind of like
love. Just love.
And
that would be the most amazing thing, if everybody that I have touched has felt love from me. Either as a human being. So if we go by the Greek words of love, because I think there's 4 or 5, and I know that one is a love just for human beings, just because you're on the planet with each other, and then you've got your family love and your romantic love, and I truly I would love it if everybody, and that's why that was a redundant statement. That's what I think that would be the biggest thing, is that somebody would say at the end of my life that they felt love from me.
Yeah. Well, I think you are walking example of love, for sure. Because for someone who went through so much, the amount of light you have around you, it's inspiring. And I wish we all could have that strength to overcome things the way you did, and use it for better, and use it again to help others. And it's a huge thing. I absolutely love it. Margaret, this was so pleasure Such a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to spend this time with you. And I knew it's gonna be powerful because we enjoyed our first conversation very much as well.
Yes, we did.
Felt like we always knew each other. It's the weirdest thing. You meet some stranger online, and next thing you know, you have a new best friend.
Yeah. Yes.
So when you want to come and meet my spoiled kitty Sissy,
You never know. I just might drop you a line and say, hey, I'm heading down south.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got to look at that.
we are quite a few hours apart, I think.
Yeah, I think it's what, 6 or 7?
I'm not sure. Never been.
I've got to go all the way across and then down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, if I ever go up north, same way.
Yeah, same thing.
What a pleasure. And I seriously hope that you could feel that personality and that light from her, even if you were just listening to this. And if somebody wants to reach to Margaret, I'll post all the links to her social media and contact information in the show notes, of course, like always. And please just let us know, how did you enjoy this episode? Let's share, subscribe, please leave comments. I would love to hear from you, because I would love to bring more and more people like this that we can all learn from, and it makes our life better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vera. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much.